There's something different about you right now. You can feel it, can't you? That subtle shift in your awareness, like you've crossed an invisible threshold that most people don't even know exists. The fact that you're here, watching this video at this exact moment, isn't random. It's not another coincidence in a string of meaningless events. This is recognition. This is confirmation of something you've been sensing, but maybe couldn't quite put into words. You've passed the final test. Now, before you dismiss that as another spiritual platitude or New Age nonsense, let me ask you something. Have you noticed that life feels different lately? Not necessarily easier, but clearer. Like you're operating from a completely different frequency than you were even a few months ago. Those situations that used to trigger you, that used to send you spiraling into anxiety or anger or desperation, they still happen, but something fundamental has changed in how you respond to them. You're not the same person who started this journey. And the journey I'm talking about isn't some weekend workshop or month-long meditation retreat. I'm talking about the deep, often brutal process of becoming who you actually are. Underneath all the conditioning, all the masks, all the stories you've been telling yourself about who you're supposed to be. Most people live their entire lives without ever taking this test, let alone passing it. They get glimpses of it, moments where they sense something deeper calling, but they turn away because it's too uncomfortable, too uncertain, too far from what everyone else is doing. They choose the familiar prison over the unknown freedom because at least they know the rules of the prison. But you didn't turn away. You kept walking toward the fire when everyone else was running from it. You kept asking the uncomfortable questions when everyone else was satisfied with comfortable lies. You kept going deeper when the surface started feeling suffocating. And somewhere along the way, without you even realizing it was happening, you stopped needing the world to be different than it is. Not because you became passive or resigned, but because you found something inside yourself that doesn't depend on external circumstances for its stability. You discovered that the peace you were searching for everywhere else was never actually missing. It was just buried under layers of conditioning that told you it had to be earned, achieved, or found somewhere outside yourself. This isn't about becoming perfect. This isn't about never feeling pain, or never making mistakes, or never having moments of doubt. The final test isn't about transcending your humanity. It's about embracing it so completely that you stop fighting against the very experience you came here to have. You've probably noticed that you're less reactive now, not because you've suppressed your emotions, but because you've learned to feel them without being consumed by them. You can be angry without becoming anger. You can be sad without drowning in sadness. You can be afraid without being paralyzed by fear. There's a space between you and your experience now, a gap that allows you to respond rather than just react. And here's what's really wild about passing this test. You didn't pass it by trying to pass it. You passed it by surrendering the need to pass anything at all. You stopped keeping score. You stopped measuring your worth against some imaginary standard of spiritual achievement. You realized that the very act of trying to become enlightened was keeping you from recognizing what was already true. The final test isn't multiple choice. It doesn't have clear instructions or a study guide. It's not something you can cram for or fake your way through. It's more like a recognition that dawns on you slowly, like the way morning light gradually illuminates a room. One day you wake up and realize you're not the same person who went to sleep, and you can't even pinpoint exactly when the change happened. But let me tell you what this test actually looked like, because it probably didn't look like what you expected. It looked like losing things you thought you needed. It looked like relationships ending, careers imploding, identities crumbling. It looked like every external source of security being stripped away until you had no choice but to find out what remained when everything else was gone. It looked like facing your deepest fears, not in some dramatic movie scene, but in quiet moments when you realized you could no longer pretend you were someone you weren't. It looked like choosing truth over comfort, authenticity over approval, presence over performance, over and over again, even when it felt like you were losing everything that mattered. And maybe you did lose things that mattered. Maybe you lost people who couldn't handle your transformation. Maybe you lost versions of yourself that felt safe but weren't actually serving you. Maybe you lost the luxury of unconsciousness, of being able to sleepwalk through life without taking responsibility for your own experience. But what did you gain? What showed up in the space where all that old stuff used to be? You gained yourself. Not the self you thought you were supposed to be, but the self you actually are when all the pretending stops. You gained access to a kind of knowing that doesn't come from books or teachers or external authorities. You gained the ability to trust your own inner guidance, even when it doesn't make logical sense. You gained something that most people spend their entire lives searching for without ever finding. You gained the recognition that you are not separate from life. You are not a victim of circumstances or a passenger on a journey you didn't choose. You are life expressing itself in human form, consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, love knowing itself through the temporary dance of separation and reunion. This recognition changes everything and nothing simultaneously. Your daily life might look exactly the same from the outside. You still brush your teeth, pay your bills, have conversations, face challenges, but the quality of your presence has fundamentally shifted. You're no longer trying to get somewhere else or become someone else. You're finally here, fully here, maybe for the first time in your life. And that presence, that quality of being fully here without needing anything to be different, that's what passing the final test actually looks like. It's not dramatic, it's not flashy, it's not something you can put on your resume or brag about at parties. It's quiet, it's subtle, it's profound. But here's where it gets really interesting, because passing this test isn't the end of anything. It's actually the beginning. When you pass the final test, something unexpected happens. You stop looking for signs that you've made it, and suddenly signs are everywhere. Not the forced kind of synchronicities that spiritual seekers chase, but the quiet kind that whisper rather than shout. The kind that show up in ordinary moments and make you smile because you finally understand the conversation that's been happening all along. You start noticing how different you feel around other people. Not superior, not separate, but like you're operating from a completely different operating system. You can be in a room full of chaos and drama and remain untouched by it. Not because you don't care, but because you've learned the difference between compassion and absorption. You can feel deeply without drowning. And here's something nobody tells you about this level of awareness. It doesn't make you immune to challenges. If anything, life might throw even more curveballs your way. But your relationship with difficulty has transformed entirely. Problems become puzzles. Obstacles become opportunities. Crisis becomes clarity. Not because you've become delusional or overly positive, but because you've developed the capacity to see the gift hidden inside every experience. You've probably noticed that you're attracting different kinds of people now. The energy vampires and drama addicts have quietly faded from your life, not because you pushed them away, but because you're no longer broadcasting the frequency that drew them in the first place. Instead, you're magnetizing people who are also operating from this deeper place. Conversations become richer, connections become more authentic, relationships become based on truth rather than need. But let me tell you about the responsibility that comes with this recognition, because once you've passed this test, once you've awakened to this level of awareness, you become a walking reminder to others of what's possible. Your very presence starts to activate something in people. Some will be drawn to you without understanding why. Others will feel uncomfortable around you because your groundedness highlights their own inner turbulence. You become a mirror, reflecting back to people their own potential for peace, for authenticity, for freedom from the mental prison they've been carrying. And that's not always comfortable for them or for you. Sometimes being a living example of what's possible means standing alone while others figure out if they're ready to step into their own truth. This is where your real work begins. Not the work of self-improvement or spiritual achievement, but the work of service, of being a steady presence in a world that's forgotten what stability looks like, of holding space for others to find their own way home to themselves, of demonstrating through your very being that it's possible to live from love rather than fear, from trust rather than control, from presence rather than panic. You don't have to teach workshops or write books or start a spiritual movement. Your service is much simpler and much more profound than that. Your service is showing up authentically in every moment, speaking truth when others are hiding behind pleasantries, choosing love when others are choosing fear, remaining calm when others are losing their center. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you embody this level of consciousness, the more ordinary you become. You're not trying to be special or enlightened or spiritually superior. You're just being human in the most authentic way possible. You're demonstrating what it looks like to be fully alive without apology, fully present without agenda, fully yourself without performance. The final test wasn't about becoming something you weren't. It was about remembering something you'd always been, but had forgotten. It was about coming home to the truth that was never actually hidden, just obscured by layers of conditioning that told you to look everywhere except within yourself. So if you're recognizing yourself in these words, if something deep inside you is nodding along with recognition, then welcome to the other side. Welcome to the beginning of your real life. Welcome to the space where growth happens not through struggle, but through surrender, where wisdom comes not through accumulation, but through subtraction, where peace is not something you achieve, but something you are. You've passed the test, not because you got all the answers right, but because you finally stopped needing to have all the answers. You've graduated not because you've become perfect, but because you've become real. You've awakened not because you've transcended your humanity, but because you've finally embraced it completely. And now the real adventure begins, the adventure of living from this place of knowing, of serving from this place of fullness, of loving from this place of wholeness, the adventure of being exactly who you are in a world that's forgotten what authentic presence looks like. If you felt the truth of what's being shared here, if something inside you has been quietly celebrating this recognition, then you know what I know. You're not the same person who started watching this video. You're the person who was always there, just waiting for the right moment to fully emerge. This is your moment. This is your recognition. This is your beginning.